I'm Giles Coren. I'm a writer, restaurant critic and general 21st century food hero. I'm being joined by writer, broadcaster and world-famous maestro, Sue Perkins, as we supersize our way through the diets of the past.
Yes, well that's one of the reasons the peasants revolted.
Each week we'll be medically tested, dress the part and work our way through the banquets of our ancestors, from the Roaring Twenties to ancient Rome. This week we'll be travelling back to the France of the 1780s. We'll be starting off as Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. We'll experience the last heady days of their reign before the guillotine got its way.
Look, there's a little orphan boy here. Here.
As the revolution hits Paris, we'll end up on the streets, eating pigeons with the paupers. And we'll discover that the revolution created not only the first restaurants, but the first restaurant critics.
No. Oops.
Actually, I'm going to vomit.
This week, Sue and I will be experiencing the 10 most tumultuous years in French history, from 1785 to 1795. It was an age of amazing new discoveries, electricity and the hot air balloon. But it was also one deeply divided between the rich and the poor. As the aristocracy gorged on banquets at Versailles, just a few miles away the Paris mob were rioting for lack of bread. As the week proceeds, we'll trace the whole history of the revolution through the food people ate. How very, very French. But before we head off, I'm taking Sue to a French doctor to see if we can cope with what's in store.
So obviously, this period, it's a revolutionary diet where we're going to lose a lot of weight from about here upwards. Right, the scarf has got to count.
Louis XVI was served 50 huge plates of meat for dinner. So I'm curious to know what all that food is going to do to us.
To digest everything. Your liver's going to increase size and your gallbladder's going to get lazy.
Not in a week.
I think in a week, yeah.
My liver's going to increase in size in a week.
So my gallbladder?
Oh yeah.
Well, mine's going to as well. I'm going to have a massive liver.
Well, then maybe we shouldn't do it.
Of course we should.
I don't want to have an engorged liver.
I don't want to end up as foie gras.
What about gallbladder? Does that go back?
They were dying in their bath because the metabolism was so slow suddenly.
So many aristocrats died in their baths after huge meals that many gave up bathing altogether.
Thank you.
Vive la France.
Vive la France.
Oh, I think he's very pessimistic.
Yes.
I've never trusted French doctors. They're all funny. We're quite lucky to get away with that as suppository, you know. That's all they usually do, the French. As long as I don't get in a hot bath, I'll be fine, which means that I won't wash. So I'll whiff a bit. It'll be very French.
Great, so I'm spending the week with a fat, flatulent frog. Good.
Allons-y.
Oui.
It's our first day and we've arrived in Paris.
So I sold my one-bedroom flat and got this. The credit crunch is really bitten in France. What do you think?
Our home for the week will be one of France's grandest chateaux, Vaux-le-Vicomte, the inspiration for the Palace of Versailles itself. And to get into character, there's nothing better than being dressed by servants.
Come on, woman.
The rules of protocol required that the King and Queen did not lift a finger.
You've done this before, haven't you?
Ooh!
What size of waist did you say you were?
10 inches.
Marie Antoinette's corset was the tightest of all.
25 and a half.
Oh, that's rubbish! We've got another 16 inches to lose.
Reserved for only the highest-ranking ladies, it was so restricting it made eating, breathing and even moving one's arms difficult.
I want the sort of waist that I can start to challenge Keira Knightley for those big, really big, meaty period drama roles. I can't breathe, is that a bad thing? This is how to achieve the J-Lo look in 0.3 seconds.
Marie Antoinette took so long to get ready, she didn't emerge from her bedroom for hours.
Oh,
Hey, hot britches.
nice. What do you think of my childbearing hips?
I think you could have triplets all at once.
Guiding us through our revolutionary diet for the week will be our very own French chef, Michael Weiss from London's Coq d'Argent. Standing in for the 500 servants in the King's kitchen, he will be cooking with a truly obscene amount of food. All this represents only 2 days of royal eating.
Oh, you said you were preparing a feast.
Blimey.
That is quite something.
Nice?
Mwah. The royal kiss goes to you.
So welcome to my kitchen. L'office de la bouche, the office of the mouth. I am your officer for this week. And this is some of the food on the table today you're going to be eating this week.
Just some of it.
Some of it. This is going to last you about 2 days, maybe 2.5 days.
So what have we got? We've got
Games, loads of games, loads of fresh fish, vegetables.
What kind of fish is that?
Got huge salmon,
brioche.
loads of brioche, and white fluffy bread, just for the aristos.
Your class determined the bread you ate. The aristocracy pecked at the fluffiest white, believing that their digestive systems were too refined to cope with anything else.
The poor people will only have
true. I can only eat very refined food.
peasant servant.
The poor subsisted on the coarsest brown.
Tough, hard.
So the peasants.
You have to soak it into broth, to be able to do anything with it. Yeah, you'll probably die if you ate brown bread.
So what happens? We head off to the posh dining room and you go downstairs and...
Yeah, you guys head off and I'll get cracking on your breakfast and suppers and dinners and lunch.
I hate to ruin your display, but I've just realised I am the queen.
Do I need to make another one?
I have the divine right to eat this.
Just the one. For now.
Come on, stop eyeing up the peasant.
90% of the population survived on nothing but bread and soup. But luckily for us, our food is coming from the grandest cookbooks of the age. The Royal Cook and the Gifts of Comus.
The recipe from that time are very vague. And there's a lot of ingredients, some preparation takes 3 to 4 hours to make what we would make something now which would take probably half an hour to an hour to make. It was just loads of ingredients put together, huge quantities of food, and hope for the best.
The King's Breakfast. Lamb cutlets, roast capon, Westphalian ham, eggs in orange flower water, champagne.
So, Louis, my king, can I get you a big fat capon?
Yeah.
Louis was a puppyish 15-year-old prince when he married Marie Antoinette in 1770. She was a naive 14-year-old princess brought up in the simpler surroundings of the Austrian court.
We'll have one each, yes? I'll give you the bigger one.
Even breakfast was a power meal.
So every single day, the king would sit down to a whole chicken, a whole ham, however many eggs.
4 of these, 4 chops. That's all right. That's very good.
Devouring a breakfast of this size every day, it's no wonder Louis's courtiers called him the Fat Pig.
I'm all over you.
Critics of the king's table manners said he ate like a monkey in a zoo, which gives me carte blanche to relax into character.
Watching the king eat is like watching a half-starved hog let loose on a compost heap. Oh, dear.
I'm playing Louis XVI, for Christ's sake. I've got fantastic table manners. It's just...
Oh! But I am a queen and I'm going...
You're,
sorry,
you're,
for the love of God.
You're, Bow's the wrong way around. I'm sorry.
Sorry, you're marking on the
moving
fact
further
my neckwear is slightly incorrect. Meanwhile, you're belching over your own fingers. I'm going to try this, though. This is the orange swirled egg vortex here, which is basically eggs and Chanel No. 5. It's rose water and eggs. So I just thought scrambled eggs too nice. Let's put some orange and flower water in it. Oh, orange flower water.
Orange flower water was the perfume of Versailles. The court was so smelly they perfumed everything, even their eggs.
Can you give me a hand with this ham, my dear?
Ready?
Just lower it onto me, dear.
Come on, get stuck in. Come on. I'm going to suffocate. It's my one chance. I could have been a contender, I was somebody in Austria. Suffocated by gammon.
The revolution doesn't come for another week.
Yeah, well, I could have finished you. Oh, that does look good. The monarchs were seen as really sort of sour and kind of miserable looking.
We'd have just done all that, but without laughing, wouldn't we? Just really sour face, belching.
Yeah, just...
Between us, we've consumed over 5,000 calories, and it's only the first meal of the day. It's playing havoc with our 21st century constitutions.
Where are you going to go?
I'm going to go here.
OK, well, I'll go over here.
Versailles had been built 100 years earlier with very few toilets, so courtiers generally answered the call of nature behind curtains and under stairs. Described as a stinking swampland by the Duc de Saint-Simon, the palace was emptied once a year, taking 2 whole weeks to scrub clean.
Hello.
Lovely to see you.
Thank you. I'm Diana Haig.
I'm the Queen, and this is my husband.
Your Majesty.
The King.
I'm here
After breakfast, we meet historian Diana Haig to brush up on our etiquette.
The most important thing that we do here at Versailles is we learn to walk. There's a special walk called the Versailles Glide. No one wants to step on any lady's train, so we walk, and we walk head up, we smile, we nod, we walk, we smile, we nod.
People might think there's something slightly wrong with us.
The 14-year-old Marie Antoinette was used to the informality of palace life in Austria. When she arrived at Versailles, she quickly had to master the many nuances of the most complex court etiquette in Europe. Here, ladies were forbidden to link arms with a man or cross their legs in public. And elegance was the most prized quality of all.
Smile and nod, but not too much acceptance. Pat the dog, pat the child, look at the peasants. Hello.
That's wonderful.
How you doing, Watcher? You're my favourite. Might have it off with you later. Goodbye, take care, farewell.
She didn't
Au
point.
revoir.
No pointing. There was no pointing involved. There we go, and slide, and
Slide and slide. Ooh.
Marie Antoinette mastered the glide to perfection and became the leader of French fashion. Sue, on the other hand, has a little way to go.
Go down through.
Do you think I have it? Oh dear.
Hey! You went down quite hard there, my
All
darling.
right. And a 1, and a 2, and a 3, and a 2. Ah, very nice. Are you all right?
Where am I? No, I'm fine, really. I'm so inbred, to be honest, I don't really notice when I take a heavy fall to the head.
After a short rest, it's time for the main meal of the day, dinner. Called the Grand Couvert, this was no ordinary meal. In a ritual that was copied by all the kings of Europe, the entire court would stand and watch as the king and queen were served an enormous banquet. This was food as theatre.
Le Grand Couvert. First service. Frog's leg soup. Cucumber soup. Mussel soup. Melon soup. Partridges in bechamel sauce. Roast chicken and crayfish. A tower of eggs.
Oh, hello. Ooh. You know what those are, don't you?
I don't know.
You're such a vegetarian.
Bogies with matchsticks.
You've never seen those before?
I'm really surprised to see the frog's leg potage on the menu. The frog's legs were supposed to be eaten by the commoners, so very surprised to see it on an actual court menu.
The frog's legs are cooked in 3 different ways. Some in a stock of verjuice, others in a ragout of mushrooms, and the rest deep-fried in batter. They are then all placed in the same groaning pot. This is show-off cooking intended to inspire awe in those watching the king eat.
Is that your first frog's leg? One of them.
When in France, eat the thigh of a frog.
You're allowed to enjoy it. You can be converted.
If I can separate what it is from what it tastes like, it's delicious. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I get into the chickeny, delicious, salty, slightly sweet richness of it all, I just think of boing, 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 slice.
The dishes arrived in waves, carried by a choreographed train of 15 plate bearers.
How many eggs do you need to eat a day?
As one course was being eaten, the next course was loaded onto the table, a display designed to illustrate the wealth and glory of France.
Melon soup. Sharp and oniony, but with then really sweet, ripe melons on top.
It's like scratch and sniff melon. It's not very nice.
So what's the etiquette? If you don't like the front row, the first division of food, can you sort of skip over that and sort of go to the Conference League, or do you have to just go in order? I don't want a mountain of eggs, particularly.
I don't think they have anything like the same kind of bourgeois concerns that you're describing. Again, part of the revolution. Surely our noblesse oblige says we don't care about the effort that went into it, we don't care about the waste that goes into it, we don't care about what it symbolises, we have whatever the hell we want.
Is it rude now for me to have a Longestine arrow?
I don't think that's how it works.
I just want one. I don't want my soup because it tastes of melon and BO. I want to have this nice thing here.
The melon is just melon, and the BO is the smell of your armpit as you reach for the thing.
That's charming, that is.
Second service. Roast mutton. Roast beef with garlic sauce. Chicory salad. Artichoke salad. Orange and pomegranate salad.
So this is like a conveyor belt, basically, and in about 40 courses' time, the fluffy toy appears. And a holiday for 2 in Ibiza.
First in our next wave of food is roast mutton, stuffed with ham and truffles and covered in a crumble of breadcrumbs.
That tastes like lamb MDF.
What do you suppose a chap has to do to get a glass of wine around here?
Scream, I'm the king, and I will execute anybody who doesn't bring me a glass of wine.
Wine? Wine?
Oh, dear.
Etiquette forbade the royal family from pouring drink for themselves. When the king called for wine, it took a pourer, a taster and a server 7 minutes to serve it.
Louis XV had an egg trick.
To entertain the enormous crowds that came to watch the royal family eat, French royalty played their favourite food game, egging the egg.
Louis XV, people would gather around hushed when a soft-boiled egg was placed on a thing, and in this case we used a bottle of wine.
It was way before television, wasn't it? This was what we did for entertainment.
He would stand up and she would move her head well back so he'd get a swing at it, and he would attempt to cut it in half. You couldn't say it didn't work.
The king is about to egg his egg.
Why didn't that break in half? Oh, I say. Oh, yes.
That was more of a scalping than...
That is absolutely ready to be eaten.
You pay 1 million livres a year for him. The king's about to egg his egg. Oh,
no, but the egg is fine. The egg is fine. Tell them again.
Sit down, man.
Tell them
Sit
again.
down.
I can egg it again.
While we're behaving like spoilt royalty in the Grand Hall, Michael plates up his pièce de résistance, a giant jelly.
It's come out in one piece, which is good. I'm worried about flavours because they're using so many ingredients in the dishes. You wouldn't be able to tell what is what inside.
Made from roast beef and diced vegetables suspended in molten calves' feet, it was designed to be looked at, not eaten.
Ah, it's got sweet corn in it. Oh dear. You see, that's the sort of thing that could turn a children's dinner party sour.
That is a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing. Let's see what it tastes like, though.
Oh, it's very rare. Given that this is a dish which is intended to show their concern for display and prettiness over content and taste, I think it's all right. It's just loads of pieces of finely sliced rare roast beef, lots of vegetables, in a soup which has been left to go cold overnight and gone solid.
Do those jellies mark the end of the line, or are there more? Because I'm now peeking.
I imagine that's probably it.
Okay.
Marie Antoinette hated eating in public so much that she hardly touched her food and yawned extravagantly at the table.
That needs a wash.
Left alone at table, Louis would gorge himself on pastries, making himself so sick so often that Marie Antoinette banned them from his menu.
Step away from the dessert trolley. Come on, step away from the dessert trolley. Just say no. People are blaming me for the fact that we haven't got any babies, and it's because little Mr. Piggy is getting impotent from too many cakes. Up we go!
Once the king had finally finished his meal, the courtiers would dive in like a pack of wolves and ravage the leftovers.
And I'm the one with the big hips. How does that work?
After hours of eating, we head straight to bed.
Ow!
Yet even here, Louis and Marie Antoinette had a duty to perform. Shy, nervous and full of food, they would take 7 years to consummate their marriage.
Should we make a dauphin?
I'd rather have a macaroon. Good night. So just a few hours after being in a corset, you get a real sense of poor old Marie Antoinette. She's in this whalebone prison. She's being constantly primped and pushed and prodded and moved from pillar to post, and she probably just wanted a bit of downtime, let it all hang out, but she never got it.
That's not that different from my normal eating. In fact, it's better. It's just on demand. It's just click your fingers and in comes the food. They've even been so good to leave outside my bedroom door some grub. I've been left some sort of a giant game pie, which we might think I wouldn't fancy after a meal like that, but Louis used to leave a couple of bottles of wine, a leg of something, some leftovers. And after a day of scoffing like that, it's only right that the King's bedchamber should have a little wee delivery outside.
By 1785, the King and Queen had been on the throne for 11 years and now had 3 children. They'd also introduced new ideas to life at court, including the modern or plumbed bathroom.
Well, today I'm going to have a typical Marie Antoinette bath. And got some of the ingredients here. First of all, really important, ass's milk. Now, because we're in France, it was always long life UHT ass's milk. So, big pitcher of ass's milk in there, just to give it a nice bit of moisture.
On top of the ass's milk, Marie Antoinette would then add blanched almonds, pine nuts, linseed, lemon peel, rose petals, marshmallow and lily bulbs into her extraordinary bath.
She liked to bathe, and she liked to bathe more than anyone else at court. People thought she was odd because she liked to have 2 baths a week. Other people sometimes have 1 bath a fortnight, 1 bath a month. Some people only bathed once a year.
Marie Antoinette was the first to introduce bathing etiquette and the flush toilet to Versailles. And for the sake of modesty, she would get in fully clothed.
You could have, oh, the grit, the pure grit under her. It's like walking on Brighton Beach. It really is. It's quite a heavy tread underfoot. And just get in there like that. Oh, that's good. Just sat on a lemon.
Sitting in her sodden chemise, Marie Antoinette would receive visitors, crochet, and even have breakfast in her bath.
Ah, the croissant. A croissant, a symbol of what it is to be French. It's as French as striking, sullenness and baguettes. And yet it isn't French at all. It's got nothing to do with France. It was actually, it's a Viennese pastry called the kipfel, which was actually invented to commemorate the victory over the Turks in 1683. There was a big siege. And the croissant, the crescent, is supposed to resemble, obviously, the Islamic moon.
So there you go. One of France's most treasured exports actually originated in Marie Antoinette's Austria.
I'm taking Sue into town, fresh from her bath and smelling of roses, to witness the latest novelty in Enlightenment France. Electricity, freshly imported from America, was wowing crowds hungry for scientific knowledge.
I'm going to be investing in wind. Yes, exactly.
Benjamin Franklin, the supposed discoverer of electricity, was now living in Paris, and even the King and Queen went to see demonstrations exactly like these.
The next one, you'll have to go and stand over this metallic plate.
You've got some of your dress coats on there.
Take off your shoes.
Look at that.
Uncertain about what's ahead, I'm letting Sue go first.
Oh no, this is like the electric chair.
But maybe
this
I think
isn't
there's
right.
something. Instead of charging the metallic ball, we will charge you negatively
Great.
with electricity.
I've got enough negative energy, so anything positive you could put in there be really...
You don't have to worry.
I can't get on with it.
It will be okay.
Okay. Oh no! Nothing, my glasses are stinging.
Marie Antoinette was so fascinated by electricity that she passed current through her body as a health cure. It's taken down Sue's beehive in one fell swoop.
I don't like it!
Look at you, that's cool.
Did people actually buy for it? No!
Turn it up, kill her!
What do you mean, kill her?
Let's have a look, where's the full power? Where do we turn it up? It says maximum and there's an exclamation mark.
No, Giles, no more.
In the dark.
Radical thinkers of the day fell in love with electricity and made it a symbol of the revolution and the new world order.
The hair's going up more and more all the time.
This current is so strong, it's making sparks appear at the ends of our fingers.
It's huge spark. Too close.
Okay.
Not too close.
Can I make sparks come out of my arse?
Not too close.
Oh!
Close.
Jesus Christ! That went right through me, really badly.
I just got seriously done.
No, you didn't seriously get it. I seriously got it. Because I'm surrounded by metal and you're not. And you stuck your anus into my force field and look at me. That's how the rich used to just basically pass their time, electrocuting themselves. A big cigarette lighter, basically.
Certainly it didn't.
Mind your head.
Back at home and fired up for food, we sit down to a private supper. In private, the King and Queen dropped the showy food of the Grand Couvert and tucked into the stuff they really liked.
Like a portent of doom.
This is just for the king.
The King revelled in roast meats and game, while the Queen, keen to keep her figure, hardly ate anything.
Smells really
Just
nice.
simple broths and biscuits dipped in water.
Broth for her. The Queen's supper was very much like a nouvelle cuisine type of eating, the way of eating. It was a plain soup with a roast. Really nice and simple, very modern way of eating. The King, still after the extravagance of breakfast and lunchtime, still managed to get like 3 or 4 different roasts. I don't know, he does it. No wonder he was called a fat pig by his friend.
King's supper. Soup Royale. Calves and pig's feet. Rabbits in love. Roast boar with Maille mustard. Crêpe with Chantilly cream. Madeira. Queen supper. Bouillon de la Reine. Cold roast fowl. Dunking biscuits. Lemonade.
Royal soup? I think that's what it's called. Oh.
Oh dear, that's sort of salmon roe.
It's not salmon roe.
Might be cod roe.
Salmon roe.
Eel flesh, pike livers and fish eggs might be Louis's idea of a simple soup, but it's not mine.
Carp roe.
Carp roe.
And there's death row, which is what you'll be on as soon as your gastric juices have really felt that.
It's not as good as the frog's leg soup.
Ditching the soup, I'm moving on to an even scarier dish. These rabbits have been stuffed, rolled and roasted, and then placed facing each other in a sea of gravy.
I don't know what he felt about his rabbits in love.
Don't separate them. Oh dear. That rabbit's got...
Is the head going to come off? It is.
The silence of the lapin. That was horrible. The decapitated head.
But that's going to remind us of the moment
when the
after you've been decapitated and I haven't yet been.
You were decapitated before me.
Was I?
Sorry, but you were.
No.
You lose your head about 10 months before I lose mine.
Really?
Overburdened with the weight of monarchy, the king hid his unhappiness in hunting and eating.
They said I was a medieval glutton, didn't they? I don't know how on earth they got that impression.
You are one big, bad, greasy bourbon, aren't you?
Overdone.
And so you take comfort in food and you eat yourself half to death, and I take comfort in buying lots of dresses. Basically, I'm coquettish and silly, and I go and buy a new frock. They were a miserable pair.
The thing is that in truth, I'm sad now. Afterwards, I was reasonably chipper before. I think it's one of those things about managing expectation, and that's what makes you happy when your life is that boring and has nothing in it. You really look forward to a meal, so you make a big deal. You have 40 courses, and you pick, and it's all great fun. Once you've actually ploughed your way through, you feel sad, your blood all goes to your stomach, I've drunk too much. Now I feel, I've got indigestion, and now I feel miserable.
Although King Louis hated his job, and Marie Antoinette detested life at court, they found solace in each other. Marie Antoinette made Louis happy, and he indulged her every whim.
It's day 3 and it's 1789, the fateful year of the Revolution. In the grip of a severe famine, grain riots broke out across the land. Oblivious to it all, I'm off to the mothership, Versailles itself. Leaving the main palace far behind me, I'm heading straight to Marie Antoinette's Toy Town farm she built at great expense at the bottom of her garden. Here, under the influence of the leading thinker of the day, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, she rejected the rigidity of court life, milked beribboned animals, collected eggs, and lived the life of what she imagined to be the perfect peasant.
I can't tell you how lovely and fortunate it is to find these perfectly cleaned Versailles eggs. Well, this is a perfect example of how the starving masses of France are existing right now. Basically, Disney World. They're not starving. They're living a lovely, perfect, idyllic existence. And I, the Queen, just wish that I could have just a sliver of what they've got right now.
In the midst of her fantasy of a farm, Marie Antoinette then invited all her lady friends to tea. On our menu is brioche cake, Austrian apple strudel, orange flower, rose water and lemon meringue, macaroons, jellied fruits, candied violets, and bowlfuls of the latest sweets.
Meringues. A filthy chalice of confectionery, it really is.
Isn't that wonderful?
Thank you, Mother.
Stocked with expensive imports of green tea from Asia and sugar from the West Indies, a dainty feast like this was the most expensive meal of all. It was like putting all the Queen's tiaras on one plate.
A peasant coming in wouldn't really recognise this as food. This would be something, an ornament, something which was devised quite simply for a different world, and a world which had absolutely no relation to work and survival.
Even the porcelain was custom made.
I'd like to talk about your breast cup, Your Majesty.
How dare you? We've only just begun and already you're on breast.
I'm so excited to be here with one of your breast cups.
Just one.
Specially commissioned for Marie Antoinette's private dairy, the jug was a symbol of fertility and nourishment, and a sign of the Queen's role as Mother of France.
Well, they're modelled. They were modelled on Marie Antoinette's real bosoms, as you can see.
Nipple.
Ah,
she was quite buxom.
These were modelled on my own bosoms, as you can see. So there's a slight contrast of shape. Look at that. Really delicious stuff, isn't it?
On being told that the starving populace had run out of bread, Marie Antoinette answered with the most famous phrase in French history: "Let them eat cake." I'm dying to find out whether she actually said it.
True or not true?
Not true.
Not true? True.
I think probably not true.
I think probably not true. I mean, there's lots of things said. I mean, there's lots of rumours abound as to what actually happened. One being that Rousseau wrote a story about a little princess who said it. It wasn't based on Marie Antoinette, but everyone took it as such.
She wouldn't have said that. Marie Antoinette was around 10 when Rousseau's book was released that had that famous line.
Marie Antoinette wished desperately to be a loving wife and mother, a very straightforward person. And I think earlier you mentioned Lady Di, and there is something of this awful paradox which poor Diana Spencer went through as well, of wanting to be a happy wife and mother, at the same time having to conform to a court etiquette which frankly was extremely repulsive to her. The tragic ending is almost inevitable.
Ensconced in her hideaway, Marie Antoinette was nicknamed Madame Deficit and accused of spending France into ruin. By now, she was the most hated woman in the nation.
Leaving Sue to her macaroons, I've escaped into Paris for a very different kind of meal. As the grain harvests failed across the land, the king launched a competition to find a new crop that would save France from famine. So today, I'm having a banquet created by the visionary pharmacist Auguste Parmentier, made entirely from the ingredient he called the saviour of France, the potato.
In the fight of Parmentier to make potatoes accepted, he made a banquet with very nicely prepared potatoes.
Potato banquet, creamed potato soup, potato salad, pomme de poisson, Parmentier bread, potato pudding, potato vodka.
Popular legend had it that potatoes caused leprosy, and they were dismissed as pig food. These early recipes were Parmentier's way of proving their safety.
Pomme purée avec de l'eau. That's just mashed potato and water, isn't it?
Yeah.
Dipping potato bread into potato soup is just like eating potatoes.
But it is an experience, anyhow.
Ah, more potatoes.
After potato soup and potato salad, it's time for mashed potato, disguised as a fish.
Again, purée de pommes de terre.
But not even starvation persuaded the peasants to eat potatoes, and with recipes like this, quite frankly, I'm not surprised.
So, at that time, it was completely new. It was really new, and these potatoes, which only pigs ate, it was something wonderful to have a meal like that.
Well, in that case, we should toast the potato, do you think?
Let us talk to
Le pomme de terre.
To the future of la pomme de terre.
On the eve of the revolution, Marie Antoinette held the last private dinners for her favourites with an abandon that defied the mood of the times. So tonight, with revolution in the air, we're having a feast of our own.
You have first to start with your complexion.
Beauty historian Elizabeth de Fado has come to help us with our makeup.
With your paste.
Are you absolutely certain that I have to do this?
Yes, you have to, because men and women are
the same?
are the same.
In France, perhaps?
You have to let go of the idea of the masculine, Giles. Let go of all those old-fashioned ideas.
I don't like the Phantom of the Opera.
Next is a red. It must be furious on your face. Perhaps you can do it more natural.
You think this is too staged?
Yeah, you look like a clown.
The aristocracy's reliance on perfume, powder and rouge was seen as effeminate and debauched. the sign of a nation in decay.
So women would paint on extra blue veins to show how aristocratic they were?
Yeah.
Bit of the boobs as well?
Not too much. Yeah.
Perfect.
Definitely, you are very aristocratic.
Do you think so?
You have to
The next step in the toilette was the beauty spot, to be placed in different locations on the face as messages in a secret, saucy language.
You have 9 positions, and each position has a meaning. Perhaps you can put it on your eyes because you will be gallant. You? No, in the corner of your eyes.
And last but not least, the powdered wig, called a puff.
Oh, yeah.
Anchoring it to the real hair was so complex that ladies wouldn't take it off for weeks.
You know what? I feel like an ornate cotton bud.
Yeah. Marie Antoinette's private dinners were still lavish, but the cooking was very different from the food displayed at the public meals. These dishes used fewer ingredients combined in simpler ways, a philosophy that would become the bedrock of modern French cuisine.
Basically, everything we're making today are classic dishes that we learned at school when we were about 14 or 16 when we're doing our apprenticeship. So we just
Refined by the great chef Antonin Carême after the Revolution, these private court dishes would become France's greatest export.
Champagne is good for dinner during the...
Joining us for our supper will be a mix of our own favourites, including a French TV star, Sandrine Voilet, a ballet dancer, and a common floozy. And it's always good to get off to a cracking start.
But don't point it at me! Or at my wig!
I love hearing girls shriek.
That's of crystal. Oh. Oh! Cup of soup chicken, my favourite. Is that crème du Barry? Oui, yes. It is the cream of du Barry.
Yep. Made from just 3 ingredients, cauliflower, chicken stock and cream, the vegetables in crème du Barry soup were a witty visual reference to the wigs of the ladies at court.
You can put the head of the du Barry raw in your potage. If you want. Ah, Michael, you're genius!
Next is poached salmon served with langoustines on a bed of newly invented mayonnaise.
Oh, major salmon. Yes, yes.
Created in 1756 to commemorate a French naval victory over the British on the Isle of Mahon, it was now the court's favourite sauce.
I just noticed, just at the opposite of the table, you've got the brown bread. The people was eating only brown bread. But during the revolution, the monarchy was eating brown bread to sympathise maybe with the population, to be closer to them.
Having brown bread with their entire salmon and lobster.
Absolutely, and caviar, yes.
Last in this course is a delicate carrot and ginger mousse.
Ginger.
Ow! The blood of the king!
Yeah,
it's not blue.
It's not blue, yeah.
Oh no, he's got a tiny prick.
In the next service are some of the greatest dishes ever created for the French court. Fillets of sole stuffed with truffles and mushrooms, duck à l'orange, millefeuille of foie gras with truffles, and crayfish in champagne. This food is so good I'm throwing etiquette to the wind.
Oh man.
And
That is some serious foie gras.
This one is la sole.
À la Pompadour?
À la Pompadour.
That's actually the perfect example, the type of meal Marie Antoinette could have had at the Trianon. So you can see it's very fresh, very simple, English manner, very unlike the court of the Ancien Régime.
If you put it on your nose, you obviously don't...
Ladies' wigs recreated the events of the day with elaborate objects such as fleets of frigates and babies in cribs. So this is our comment on the state of Sue after 4 bottles of champagne.
We're a French woman. I'm representing the very best of France. And to this, we drink. To France. Yes, to France. To you.
To you.
Anything goes.
And this is exactly what Marie Antoinette liked. No etiquette. She didn't eat during...
In our last course, we have some of the Queen's favourite desserts: chantilly cake, rum barbars, and little custard pies called Wells of Love.
That is absolutely delicious.
I would love to. Would you want to try the preferred drink of Marie Antoinette and the libertines?
In this chocolate is vanilla, musk and ambergris, a liquid secreted by the intestines of the sperm whale. This is 18th century Viagra.
It was drunk in the end of a meal to have a good sex after all. Yeah.
Oh, so where do I put it? Do you just put it straight in? Yeah, come on.
You have to drink it.
You're going to have a good sex afterwards?
You have to drink it.
That's horrible. It's like a fox has just in it, isn't it?
It does. It has also a sort of jade fluid element.
As we digest our dessert with a dance, in the kitchen Michael's made us a final surprise, a sugar sculpture of the Bastille prison.
So a little sending off to the aristocrats. Vive la Révolution. We're just going to set fire to the Bastille. This is the beginning of the revolution.
Oh my God, that's so wow! La Bastille! La Bastille!
On the 14th of July 1789, the Bastille, the symbol of the king's absolute power, was stormed by the revolutionaries and burned to the ground. This was the beginning of the end for the king and queen, who had only 3 months left of their charmed life at Versailles.
I've got to sleep now with this on my head, which is apparently what all the great ladies with huge wigs used to do. They would just, that's how they'd sleep, basically. It's a cross between a coffin and a petting zoo, because there'd be so many creatures crawling around in your wig after a while. It was literally crawling with vermin. Good night.
We're terribly hungover from the night before, and this non-stop feasting is getting to both of us. In a last-ditch attempt to stave off the revolution, royalist newspapers encouraged the nobility to fast 1 day a week. The saved money was to be donated to the state. So we're spending today walking.
Come on.
And playing billiards. Both of them indigestion cures of the day.
How did it go?
We then say a final goodbye to the world of the Ancien Régime. For on October the 5th, 1789, Versailles was stormed, and the King and Queen were taken to Paris with their 2 surviving children. The days of grand dinners were over.
Oh, that's so nice.
It's day 5 and it's 1791. By now, the King and Queen had been under house arrest for 2 years in the Tuileries Palace in central Paris. Afraid for their lives, they disguised themselves as servants and attempted to escape.
Ah, you two out.
Go on.
Alongside 6 royals, 2 servants and 4 coachmen, they stuffed their carriage with so much baggage that they could only travel at 7 miles an hour.
Go, go, go!
I mean, it is awful having to flee the palace, but on one level you do get to see the sights.
Records still exist of the meal they took with them, and today we're having it for our lunch.
Only the monarchy could have such a closed mind to think it would be appropriate to have a banquet whilst escaping.
And you wonder where they
from the mob.
stashed it, because I assumed that it was like the Great Escape. I assumed they tunnelled their way out of the palace.
Escape dinner. Bœuf à la mode. Carrots in aspic. Petit pois à la française. Champagne.
It's basically groin and gravy, I think.
What's that?
It looks like airplane food, doesn't it?
It's tinned petit pois with...
Oh, I quite like it. I don't know why I put on that voice, because I'm suddenly the queen. Ooh, I quite like it.
The invention of aspic was actually for this very meal, because the Queen loved her carrots, but the problem was, like travel Scrabble, that the pieces would all fly out. So what you do is you set it in jelly.
Thanks so much for that.
Sorry.
It seems the food was much better thought through than the escape itself.
Did I get one of those revolutionaries with my cork? I was aiming for Robespierre, who was leaning out of a window.
I'm supposed to be disguised, but this is just... I just can't stop myself. Can't stop myself. Once a queen, always a queen. Look, there's a little orphan boy here. Here.
You moved a bit too fast and covered us in poo, my dear.
The journey was to end in failure. The king's face was recognised from a coin, and the royal family was captured halfway to the Austrian border. Escorted by 6,000 soldiers, it took the king and queen 3 days to return to Paris and to prison.
The country was now run by a rebel government led by the fiercely anti-royalist Robespierre. On January the 21st, 1793, King Louis XVI was finally sent to the guillotine. Her husband dead and separated from her children, Marie Antoinette was now alone in prison, awaiting her own fate.
She was eating in a tiny pokey cell. She was forced to strip in front of the guards. She was humiliated. They sheared her hair off. She wasn't allowed to go to the loo in private. She tried to huddle behind a curtain, and the jailer swept the curtain to one side and just stood over her. When she sat down for her last meal, people wanted to say that it was, you know, huge great cuts of meat and entremet and patisserie, and that she gorged up to the end. But in reality, she had a very simple soup, and even that she could only manage a few drops of.
No recipes of that soup survive, so today I'm having the dish created in her honour after her death by the great chef Carême, who added vermicelli to her usual watery broth.
What Carême loved about Marie Antoinette was that she never broke, despite all her persecutors trying to bring her to a point of malnutrition and to a point of degradation. Even at the end, when she stepped up to the guillotine and everyone expected her to crumble, she refused to do so. Her original soup would have just been very bare and very thin, but Carême posthumously gave it a little bit of pep and just something extra to give her that bit of oomph she needed for her trip up to the scaffold.
On October the 16th, Marie Antoinette was executed on the guillotine. Over the next 12 months, in a period known as the Terror, 60,000 people would follow her to their deaths.
Today we've woken up to a very different world. The terror is in full swing, and we are no longer the king and queen. With Louis and Marie Antoinette dead, Sue and I must now live as revolutionaries. So we rendezvous in the centre of Paris to dress the part.
Sorry, I'm late. Load of decapitated heads on the road.
All those loyal to the nation wore the red, white and blue of the new revolutionary flag, the tricolore.
I want to get this on.
There must be a shortage of women if I'm suddenly Miss France, I tell you.
The guillotine was installed in this very square, so today we're having a revolutionary picnic as we watch the heads roll.
Republican feast, pain d'égalité, pigeon bisque, French fries, sans-culotte cake, chestnuts, red wine.
No less than anything else. A chestnut, Citizen Sue?
Thank you, Citizen Giles. I'm going to try some pain d'égalité, which is great because if you didn't want to eat it, you could just use it to smash windows and loot the shops.
What an irony that it's impossible to share the pain d'égalité.
Oh,
Now the new government decreed that only one type of bread could be baked in the city: equality bread. Mixing the white flour of the rich with the brown of the poor, this truly was a utopian loaf.
Anybody making sort of anything with fine white flour or sugar, guillotine. It's got to be a couple of parts wheat flour and then some rye flour, and then everyone's happy.
It wasn't just what you ate, but how you ate it that could send you to the guillotine. Everything to do with the aristocratic table was banned, so there was no cutlery, no etiquette, and all food was shared.
We're not allowed knives and forks because knives and forks are bourgeois. Pigeon?
Thanks. And the serving suggestion, really. It's just lovely.
This one's still having a little... I think we want to talk about what that's doing. It's all this
Not even my cat wants to eat it, look. A healthy animal doesn't want to touch it.
Got a glass?
No glasses, Citizen Giles. This is the proletariat. We drink from the bottle.
Here, watching the guillotine, women knitted and Madame Tussaud made waxwork models of the decapitated heads.
That looks an awful lot more delicious than the pigeon.
She would later display these in London.
Food of the boar.
In the midst of all this madness, a truly revolutionary recipe was born.
Oh, the very first French fries. These are actually the very ones, why they're a little bit soggy.
Blessed with a decent recipe, the potato was finally adopted by the people and became the food of the new republic.
That is as bad a meal as I've ever had.
It's 1794, and it's our final day in France. In a revolt against the endless killings, the leader of the revolution, Robespierre himself, was sent to the guillotine, and the terror was over. No longer in fear of their lives, the nobility came out of hiding and returned to fancy fashion, this time as a macabre means of self-expression. In honour of those killed, women gave themselves short guillotine haircuts, sewed the executioner's cross on their backs, and wore some very twisted jewellery. In this celebration of death, the final touch was a red ribbon around the neck to mark the strike of the blade.
Lovely.
What about this?
Bent on revenge, angry young aristocrats would roam the streets looking for revolutionaries to beat to death. In a wave of retribution called the White Terror, more people were killed than in the terror itself.
After battering revolutionaries, I like to eat a massive feast. What do you reckon?
You were engaging in that with some gusto.
Well, it gets the blood up, you know. This is way before gymnasium. What do you have to do to get a restorative broth around here? I'm getting real twig happy now.
For our lunch, we sit down at the newest craze in revolutionary Paris, the restaurant.
Bonjour.
Named after the broth they sold, called restaurant, these new establishments were touted as the health spas of the day.
It's sort of ironic that a soup designed for the weak-chested should resemble phlegm. Oh, but it's really nice.
It is really nice. The meat is quite chewy, isn't it?
As a new class flooded into Paris looking for places to eat, the restaurant developed into what we know today. Rooms in which you sat at your own table and ordered the food you wanted off a newfangled menu.
Une omelette, s'il vous plaît.
Une omelette?
Avec 2 œufs. 12 eggs.
Within a few years, the restaurant would take over Paris. Into this new culinary explosion came the world's first restaurant critic, Grimaud de la Reynière. Today we are holding a feast in honour of the man who invented my job. Post-revolutionary Paris went party mad, and to celebrate, this extraordinary man held extraordinary dinners to mark the end of the old world and the beginning of the new. In his mocking tribute to the revolution's obsession with death and gluttony, food was served off coffins and live pigs were invited to his table.
I've never eaten in the shadow of a coffin before, or within smelling distance of a pig, which is it's a good idea.
With the cataclysm of the French Revolution, a lot of the nobility have to emigrate, and their chefs, suddenly these people are out of work, and what do? They create restaurants, and there weren't half a dozen of them before the revolution, now there are 500 of them.
So it's going to go into this.
To continue our macabre theme, Michael is cooking our strangest menu yet, a sort of cuisine noire in which every dish will be black.
This venison, we're going to marinate it in red wine with some chocolates, trying to make everything look black or as black as possible.
Funerary feast. Turtle soup. Black bread, black olives and caviar. Monstrous egg. Mule steaks. Frankfurt smoked sausages. Roast venison in chocolate sauce. Truffles in jelly. Chocolate fruit. Coffee.
We kick off the evening with an oil slick of a soup, made not from real turtle, but from squid ink and oxtail.
Well, it was just very sort of glutinous.
Little stringy, huh?
The soup's good.
It is.
A bit cold, yeah.
So we've got the egg here cooking.
Downstairs, Michael's cooking the strangest dish we've seen this week. A monstrous egg made from boiling 48 eggs in a pig's bladder. Yummy.
Oh, it's the rotten egg type of smell. Oh, that is pretty bad.
I really got. Oh my word!
Oh no!
What is that?
Is that the monstrous egg?
This is a real pig's bladder, which of course,
God, it's
famous.
leaking.
Is it? Bladders will do that in their old age.
Originally a 15th century recipe, this appears to have been Grimaud's savage comment on the birth of a monstrous new world.
Sorry, that is Alien. That is basically, we've recreated Ridley Scott's seminal film.
I can't believe anyone really ate that.
So that's the pig bladder mostly done.
At Grimaud's dinners, male guests were encouraged to wipe their hands on their ladies' hair between courses.
Anybody want any of the...
No, they've got quite a sulphurous...
Can you pass me that pig's bladder? Pass me that pig's bladder.
No.
Today there shall be nobody touching my hair.
Yeah, I was...
French Revolution.
Actually, I'm going to vomit.
It's the wrong colour, but it's...
Meanwhile, the pig is being squirted to hide the smell of me.
Black Feast, or the Black Friday as I would call it, hasn't been a really pleasant experience today. Having to cook very dark food with very horrible dark flavours, like sort of burnt flavours. Everything is black and covered in chocolate and browning and everything like this, so it hasn't been really nice. I think Grimaud was a bit crazy.
What is it?
I don't know, the menu said mule.
Next up is venison in chocolate, and mule steaks.
I think the surface is reflective, so you can see your own look of horror as you tuck in.
Okay, what we've got there, I think this is their mules.
In 1795, Grimaud set up the world's first jury of food critics.
I guess it's sort of fillet steaky, ostrich. It's a bit more like ostrich, but
Paris's new restaurants sent their dishes to be judged during weekly 5-hour dinners at his house.
For the first time, food becomes something that everybody can appreciate, if not afford, but suddenly dining is out there. It's not the preserve of people in palaces and kept away from the ordinary person.
The revolution had democratised food. Now the colour of one's bread was no longer determined by one's class, but simply by whether one could afford it.
The truffle jellies have come out nice, looking good, but they taste absolutely disgusting. Just got to finish the cake, and that's it really. But it's probably one of the worst meals I've ever cooked. It's absolutely disgusting.
I can taste truffle, which is the thing I like, and I can also taste Bassett's licorice, all sorts.
As an initiation ceremony into Grimaud's critics' circle, his guests were obliged to drink 17 coffees after dinner. In the spirit of my forebear, I can think of no better end to a bonkers week.
So, after you?
After the eggs, after the courgette eggs. It's hot.
Despite tonight's horrific meal, Grimaud went on to guide French food into a triumphant new era.
Oh, come on, man, keep up.
In a world of restaurants, critics and food available to all, the refined dishes first created for the court would become the classics of a national cuisine that would go on to rule the world.
I win. Unlucky. You lose. Have another cup of coffee.
Vive la révolution!
Vive
la révolution!
Vive la révolution!
I loved it. What can I say? I mean, before I've even finished that sentence, you know, this is a meal to die for. When you're sitting swilling in pig's excrement with the stink of 17 coffees, you know you've lived. And this is what the revolution was for.
Let's face it, we've lived the whole of the French Revolution, 4 or 5 years of terrifying history in a very, very brief space of time. And without 17 coffees, I would have no way of dealing with it.
Back in the 21st century, it's time to see what a week of revolutionary food has done to our bodies.
So, how do the results look this time?
Very surprising. I'm not too sure if I'm a good doctor or not, but everything is much better for Giles and Sue.
See, this king and queen thing really works for us, you know?
It did. So Giles, your cholesterol was 6.7. After 1 week of French food, it's 6.1. Your bilirubin was 32, now it's 16, half of it, and the rest is perfect.
How amazing! Our weight's the same, our sugar levels are lower, and our livers have actually got healthier. Thank God the revolution got us in time.
Apparently 1 week of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette diet is very good for people, so maybe I'm going to prescribe it right now.
Excellent.
What a result.
Yeah, nice one. Just goes to show that your own diet, the diet you live 24/7 as Giles Coren restaurant critic, is actually worse for you than all that binging and scoffing and troughing that you did as Louis XVI, the most famous pig of in the entire history of France.
The idea that I could follow the example of a man reviled and ridiculed by his people for being a glutton and get healthier just shows that, frankly, they didn't know the half of it, didn't they? My cholesterol was down on 10%.
Next week, Sue and I will be eating our way through the Roaring Twenties. It was the era to be young and beautiful. In the few hours we're sober, we'll be living the high life, and I'll be delving deep into Sue's psyche.
Yeah, my darling.
It's all a myth.
Oh! No, you don't have to pay. Well, you... No, I'm not. We're not begging, we're not begging, we're not begging.
Who are you?
It's a Scarlet Pimpernel.
Oh my God.
Oh dear, he's also bald.